They turned my alfalfa field into their parking lot. The fire cost them thousands. I don't live in the HOA. That's important. My property borders it. The backside of their clubhouse sits right against the edge of my field. About 12 acres where I grow alfalfa. It's not glamorous farming, but it pays the bills. Cut it, dry it, bale it, sell it to the feed suppliers. Same cycle every season. The HOA neighborhood, on the other hand, is very glamorous. Big houses, stone entry gates, a clubhouse with a fountain and a patio big enough to host weddings. They love hosting events there, charity dinners, wine tastings, neighborhood galas. Sometimes they even rent it out for outside parties. And apparently they decided my field was part of their amenities. The first time it happened, I thought it was just people being careless. I came out one Saturday morning and found about 20 cars parked across the edge of the field while some HOA party was going on next door. People had driven straight through the gap in the fence line and treated the place like a gravel lot, except it wasn't gravel. It was crops. I walked over to the clubhouse and told them to move the cars. They apologized, said they didn't realize it was private property. The cars moved and I assumed that was the end of it. It wasn't. The next event brought 30 cars, then 50. Then they started directing people there. One of the volunteers even put up a small temporary sign once that said event parking, with an arrow pointing into my field. I tore it down. I told the HOA board repeatedly that my field wasn't a parking lot. I sent letters. I put up no trespassing signs. I even put up temporary fencing one summer, which someone conveniently moved during the next big party. Eventually, the damage started costing me. Alfalfa doesn't grow well when people drive trucks over it. I lost a strip of crop along the edge of the field one season because the plants were crushed down repeatedly, so I billed them, not aggressively, just a standard agricultural damage estimate. To my surprise, they paid it. For a while, that actually solved the problem. Cars stopped showing up in the field. Then the next season came around. Anyone who farms hay knows there's a critical window after you cut alfalfa. The crop has to dry in the field before it can be baled. During that time, it sits there in rows, what farmers call windrows, drying in the sun. That drying hay is extremely flammable, which is why farmers are very careful about what gets near it. Apparently, the HOA didn't understand that. They decided to host a regional car convention at their clubhouse. Classic cars. Hundreds of them, and they advertised my field as overflow parking. I didn't know about the event until the cars started showing up. Rows of them, driving straight onto the cut alfalfa like it was a county fairground. I went over to the clubhouse immediately. "You need to move those cars," I told them. The board member running the event waved a hand toward the field. "Relax," he said. "You already harvested it." I stared at him for a moment. "I cut it," I said. "I didn't harvest it yet." He didn't understand the difference, so I explained. The hay still had to cure. It had to dry properly before baling. Right now, it was basically a field full of dry plant material, exactly the kind of thing you don't park hot engines on. I told him it was a fire hazard. He laughed. "You're leaving it there to rot anyway," he said. "Why would you care?" I remember that sentence very clearly. I called the sheriff. A deputy came out and looked at the situation. He spoke with the HOA organizers, told them the cars were trespassing on private agricultural property, and started issuing warnings. He even called a tow truck for a few vehicles that refused to move. Once people realized the sheriff was serious, most of the cars left. I thought that solved it, for exactly 1 week. The next weekend they came back. This time the board president walked up to me with a piece of paper. "County permit," he said proudly. "We're authorized to hold the event." I read it. It authorized the car convention at their clubhouse. It said nothing about my field. "That doesn't give you permission to park here," I told him. He shrugged. Cars started rolling in again. Hundreds of them. They filled the field deeper this time. Tires flattening the windrows of drying alfalfa. Engines idled. Exhaust pipes sat inches above brittle hay. I repeated the warning. I told them exactly what would happen. They ignored me. Late that afternoon it happened. One of the cars, a classic muscle car that had been revving its engine all day, pulled off into a deeper section of the field. The driver parked directly on top of a thick windrow of dried alfalfa. A few minutes later, someone shouted, "Smoke," then flame. Dry hay burns fast. The fire spread along the windrows like someone had poured gasoline across the field. Within seconds, several cars were surrounded by flames. People scrambled to move vehicles, but many of them were boxed in. The fire department got there quickly. but by then a handful of cars had already burned. The field looked like a war zone, blackened strips, melted chrome, the smell of burned rubber and hay drifting across the neighborhood. Weeks later, I received a lawsuit. Several car owners were suing me for the loss of their vehicles. According to their complaint, I had created a dangerous condition by leaving dried plant material in my field. My lawyer read it and just started shaking his head. During the case, the HOA's promotional materials surfaced, the ones advertising my field as event parking. Photos appeared showing volunteers directing cars onto the property, emails between board members discussing how convenient the extra space was. Then the sheriff testified. He explained that he had warned the HOA the previous week that the field was private property and that vehicles parked there were trespassing. Then the fire marshal testified. He explained exactly how hay curing works and how easily dried alfalfa ignites under hot engines. Finally, my lawyer introduced the letter I had sent the HOA earlier that season warning them not to use the field because of the fire risk. The judge dismissed the claims against me. Then he turned his attention to the HOA, encouraging people to park on private agricultural land without permission, especially after being warned about the hazard, did not play well in court. The car owners redirected their lawsuits, not at me, at the HOA. The last I heard, the settlement for the burned vehicles cost the association more than it would have taken to build a proper parking lot in the first place. My field eventually recovered, and now every time the clubhouse hosts a big event, there's a long row of bright orange "No Parking" private field signs. Along the fence line, no one seems confused about them anymore.